doors slid open, and the cool night air of New York slapped against my face. I'd just landed after weeks overseas, drained from endless meetings and negotiations, but glowing inside. My startup launch had been a success. Investors had shaken my hand, contracts had been signed, and for the first time in years, I finally felt like everything was falling into place. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us, what would you do in this situation? Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. Dragging my suitcase to the curb, I called a cab. All I wanted was to step into my apartment, collapse on the couch I'd worked so hard to buy, and breathe. But as the driver pulled into my street, something immediately felt wrong. My apartment door looked different. The lock. The familiar silver lock I'd twisted open 1,000 times was gone, replaced by a shiny new brass one. My chest tightened. I tried my old key, but it didn't fit. Panic coursed through me. Had I been robbed? My phone buzzed. A message from Mom. Come home tonight. We need to talk. Confused and already furious, I headed straight to my parents' house. The moment I walked in, my brother Kyle was sprawled on the couch, his new wife giggling beside him. Their hands clutched plane tickets, glossy brochures of exotic beaches, scattered on the coffee table. Dad sat across from them, grinning like a proud king. I dropped my suitcase with a heavy thud. What the hell happened to my apartment? My voice cut through the room. The laughter stopped. Mom's smile faltered. But Dad didn't even flinch. He leaned back, hands folded across his chest. Relax, Natalie, he said casually. Kyle needed help. We sold the apartment key. I blinked, my heart hammering. You... What? Kyle smirked, his arm tightening around his wife. It's just an apartment, Nat. You're making money now, traveling the world, living your dream. Meanwhile, I just got married. Don't I deserve a proper honeymoon? My throat burned with rage. You used my home, something I built, paid for, sacrificed for, like it was pocket change? Dad leaned forward, his voice sharp. He deserved it more. Family comes first. Your brother is starting a family. You can always get another place. For a moment, silence thickened the air. Mom shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting between us. Kyle's wife bit her lip, suppressing a smug smile. And that's when it happened. I stepped closer, my jaw clenched, my voice barely above a whisper. 5 words. You'll regret this betrayal. The room froze. Even Kyle's cocky smirk slipped. Dad opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I grabbed my suitcase, the wheels scraping against the hardwood as I dragged it back out the door. My hands were trembling, not from weakness, but from fury I knew I'd never forget. This wasn't just about an apartment. It was about respect, about loyalty, about how little they valued me unless I was pouring into their lives. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to play the silent daughter anymore. The cab ride back to a cheap hotel felt like the longest drive of my life. The neon lights of the city blurred outside the window, but inside me, everything was sharp. Every memory, every word, every insult burned into my mind. He deserved it. More. Dad's voice kept repeating like poison. I tossed my suitcase onto the hotel bed and sat in the dim glow of the bedside lamp, staring at the cracked ceiling. For years I had played by their rules. Study hard, pay your way, don't cause trouble. While Kyle drifted from one failed job to the next, they coddled him. And now? They'd sold my apartment key for his honeymoon, as if my life, my blood, sweat, and sacrifices meant nothing. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Kyle. A smug text lit the screen. Try not to be bitter, sis. We'll bring you a souvenir. My hands shook as I typed back, but I stopped myself. No, words weren't enough. This wasn't about firing off angry texts. This needed something bigger. Something they wouldn't see coming. I opened my laptop. The glow of the screen lit my face as I signed into my startup's financial portal. My overseas launch hadn't just been good, it had been phenomenal. Contracts worth millions sat secured under my name. Investors trusted me. And suddenly, I realized I wasn't powerless anymore. I spent the next hour calling contacts, arranging meetings, sketching out plans. Every keystroke steadied my pulse. By the time dawn broke, painting streaks of pale orange across the sky, I wasn't the daughter they mocked anymore. I was the woman with leverage. Still, I had to see it with my own eyes. That evening, I walked up to my apartment building, my steps echoing against the pavement. A stranger, a young couple, opened the door with my keys. They smiled politely as they passed, carrying groceries, completely unaware they were living in the place I'd built. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to breathe. This wasn't their fault. My fight wasn't with them. It was with the people who shared my blood. The next weekend, my parents hosted a family dinner. They thought I wouldn't show. Maybe they expected me to sulk quietly in some corner of the city, licking my wounds. But when I stepped into the dining room, wearing a tailored black suit that screamed success, every head turned. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. "Natalie, you came." Dad didn't rise. He leaned back in his chair, his voice flat. "I hope you're not here to cause a scene." Kyle chuckled, his arm draped over Megan's shoulders. "Oh, come on, Nat. Don't make it awkward. We're family. Family." The word sliced through me like a blade. I smiled coldly, pulling out a chair. "You're right, Kyle. Families should support each other. But I've realized support doesn't mean sacrifice. It doesn't mean I keep bleeding. While you live off my veins," Megan rolled her eyes. "It's just an apartment. Honestly, if you're so successful now, why do you care so much?" I leaned forward, my eyes locked on hers. "Because it wasn't yours to take." The room went still. Dad cleared his throat, his voice sharp. "Enough. You're blowing this. Out of proportion. Your brother is settling down. He deserves comfort. You? You'll survive." My pulse hammered, but my voice stayed steady. Funny. That's exactly what my investors said about me when they handed me control of a multi-million-dollar project. I'll survive. I'll thrive. But you... My eyes shifted to Dad. "You just burned the last bridge to the only child. Who ever gave a damn about you?" For the first time, Dad's expression faltered. He shifted in his seat, his authority cracking for just a moment. I stood, sliding an envelope across the table. "This is a copy of my company's first quarter earnings. In case you're curious, it's more than this house is worth. While you were busy selling off my home like it was pocket change, I was building an empire." Mom's hand trembled as she opened the envelope, her eyes widening at the figures. Kyle scoffed, pretending not to care, but I saw the flicker of envy flash across his face. I picked up my coat, slinging it over my arm. "Enjoy your honeymoon, Kyle, because when you come back, you'll find that doors don't open so easily anymore." Kyle frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" I turned at the doorway, my voice low, deliberate. "You'll find out soon enough." And with that, I walked into the night, leaving behind the stunned silence of a family who had just realized they'd underestimated me for the last time. The revenge had only just begun. The silence that followed me out of my parents' house clung to me like smoke, but by the time I hit the street, my mind was already racing ahead. For the first time in my life, I held the power, and I wasn't about to waste it. The next morning, I sat in my office downtown, the skyline stretching across the glass windows behind me. My phone buzzed with congratulatory emails, partnerships confirmed, deals closed, but I ignored them. My focus was sharper now. One call to my lawyer set things in motion. "I want you to review the sale of my apartment key," I said, my tone firm. "I don't care if it was legal. Find me leverage. Every detail." By noon, I had what I needed. My parents hadn't sold my unit legally. They'd pawned access to my place through backdoor strings, signing agreements that technically weren't theirs to sign. The building management wasn't pleased either, especially when I pointed out the liability it created for them. The result? The new tenants were politely asked to vacate within 30 days. Compensation for their trouble would come directly from my parents. But I wasn't done. Later that week, I visited a boutique bank where Kyle had applied for a joint loan with Megan. Their dream honeymoon wasn't cheap. They were already overextended. Thanks to my contacts, I had access to information they didn't expect me to know. And with one conversation, I let the bank know about the irregularities in how my family handled property rights. Risk flagged. Loan frozen. That evening, Kyle stormed into my office without knocking. His face was flushed, eyes wild. "You think you're clever?" he spat, slamming his hand on my desk. "Our loan just got denied, and the landlord is threatening to sue Mom and Dad." "What did you do?" I leaned back in my chair, calm as ice. "I simply corrected a few mistakes. Nothing personal, just business." Kyle's voice cracked with desperation. "You're destroying us over an apartment?" I stood, my voice sharp. "No, Kyle. I'm not destroying you over an apartment. I'm teaching you what it feels like when someone rips stability out from under you like it means nothing." He swallowed hard, but his arrogance wouldn't die. "Dad will fix this. He always does." I smiled faintly. "Not this time." The words hit him like a blow. He left, slamming the door, but the tremor in his hands told me he finally understood. This wasn't the Natalie they'd stepped on before. That weekend, Mom called, her voice trembling over the line. "Natalie, honey, you've made your point. Please stop. Your father hasn't slept in days." A pang hit me, but I steeled myself. "Mom, I begged you for years to see me, to value me. You never listened. Now you'll have no choice." Her silence was heavier than her words. The following Monday, I walked into a boardroom full of investors. Cameras clicked as reporters snapped photos. On the giant screen behind me, my company's logo gleamed. I gave my presentation with steady confidence, outlining expansion plans, projections, future milestones. But what mattered most wasn't the applause that followed. It was the sight of Richard Carter, my father, standing in the back. His face was pale, his pride visibly crushed as the world saw the daughter he'd dismissed as less deserving, now commanding the attention of an empire. I locked eyes with him as I closed my presentation. Sometimes the people who doubt you the most are the ones who need your success shoved in their face. The room erupted in applause, but I didn't look away. For the first time, Dad lowered his eyes before mine, and in that moment, I knew. The tide had turned. The girl they dismissed was gone. In her place stood a woman they could never control again. The applause in the boardroom faded into the background as I stood there, staring at my father. Richard Carter, the man who had once towered over me in every way, now looked small. The lines of confidence etched on his face were gone, replaced with cracks of doubt. When the cameras cut off and the room began to clear, I walked straight toward him. He didn't move. "Impressive show," he muttered, his voice low, almost defensive. I tilted my head. It wasn't a show. It was reality, and reality doesn't bend to your favoritism anymore. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in my father's eyes. Not fear of me, but of what he had lost. That night, I returned to my hotel, exhaustion pressing down on me, but my mind still sharp. The victory wasn't complete. Success was sweet, but it wasn't enough to erase the years of dismissal, the betrayal, the sting of hearing he deserved it more. The phone rang. It was Mom. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Natalie," her voice cracked. "Your father, he doesn't know how to handle this. Kyle is furious. Megan's threatening to leave him if things don't get better. Can we meet? Just us?" Her words carried a desperation I'd never heard before. For once, she wasn't speaking from a place of control. She was pleading. We met the next morning at a quiet diner off the highway. She looked older than I remembered. Lines of worry etched deep around her eyes. She reached across the table, trying to take my hand. "I know we failed you," she whispered. "We were wrong, but you're punishing us too harshly." I pulled my hand back, steady but firm. "Harshly? Mom, you sold the lock to my home like it was a toy. You treated me like a spare part in this family, useful only when I'm paying bills or picking up slack. And now you want forgiveness because you're uncomfortable with the consequences?" Her eyes filled with tears. "We never thought you'd rise this far. We didn't know." "That's the problem," I cut her off. "You never cared to. No. You only cared about Kyle's comfort, his happiness, his future. Mine never mattered." She fell silent, her tears dripping into her coffee. For a flicker of a second, I almost softened. Almost. But then I remembered sleeping in that cold hotel room, knowing strangers were in my apartment, laughing at how disposable I must have been in my own parents' eyes. I leaned forward. "Tell Dad this. I'll never forget what you did, and I'll never go back to being the daughter you can walk over. I'll help you only on my terms, terms where my respect is valued, not auctioned off." She nodded slowly, as if she finally understood. 2 weeks later, the cracks in their perfect world split wide open. Kyle's loan was officially denied. Megan walked out, leaving him drowning in debt he couldn't pay. Word spread in their small circle of friends about the honeymoon scandal, about the apartment, about how their greed had backfired. As for my parents, they were forced to cover the lawsuit from the tenants they'd wronged, draining their savings. The same father who once declared he deserved it more now sat quietly in his living room, surrounded by bills he couldn't escape. And me? I signed the lease on a penthouse downtown. The view stretched across the city, the skyline glowing like a crown. I invited my closest friends, my colleagues, my team from overseas. Laughter filled the room, glasses clinked, and for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged. Not because someone gave me permission, but because I had carved it myself. Near the end of the night, I stepped out onto the balcony, the cool breeze brushing against my face. My phone buzzed. A message from Dad. "We're proud of you. Please come home." I stared at the words for a long moment. Proud. The word I had longed to hear as a child, begged for as a teenager, worked myself to the bone for as a young woman. And now, when I had built my empire without them, they finally said it. But it was too late. I typed back, "Respect isn't earned when it's convenient. It's earned when it's hardest. Goodbye." I put the phone away and looked out at the city. The girl who once begged for her family's approval no longer existed. In her place stood a woman who had turned betrayal into power, silence into strength, and wounds into fire. And somewhere deep down, I knew they would never forget the night I whispered 5 words